One of the biggest misconceptions in the entire NBA, actually, scratch that. One of the biggest misconception in all of sports is if you assemble a team filled with multi-time all-stars, they are automatically more susceptible to winning than the average NBA team. And while in a vacuum that does seem to make a lot of sense, recent history has indicated otherwise. One of my favorite examples of this simple concept is going all the way back to the 2013 Los Angeles Lakers, a team that was so hyped up that it featured Steve Nash and Dwight Howard on the cover of Sports Illustrated with the title, "Well, this is going to be fun." But unfortunately, throughout the entire year, the one thing that the Los Angeles Lakers were lacking that season was consistency. Whether it was firing their head coach prematurely for randomly deciding to install the Princeton offense and bringing in Mike D'Antoni to completely shift the offensive scheme, even though the players didn't necessarily fit that scheme, or if it was just a plethora of injuries and the fact that the Lakers losing to teams that they should have defeated eventually started to affect the team in the locker room. But an even more recent example that I like to point out to people is the 2019 to 2020 Los Angeles Clippers, a team that initially, when they were constructed, many analysts, and myself included despite being a Laker fan, said that they were the favored team in Los Angeles that is expected to challenge the Los Angeles Lakers and eventually defeat them for NBA supremacy in the West. As a matter of fact, if you go back a year ago, right before the pandemic started to shake the entire NBA, the Los Angeles Clippers posted a perfect 9 wins and 0 losses when their entire team was fully healthy. But ultimately, that would become their demise. We know what would happen in the NBA bubble. Lou Williams would go to Magic City, and as a result, he had to sit out some games. The defending Sixth Man of the Year, Montrezl Harrell, wasn't available due to personal issues, and Patrick Beverley wasn't fully available in the bubble as well. By the time they came back, the Los Angeles Clippers seemed to have struggled mightily with their team chemistry because their entire team didn't necessarily have an opportunity to play together. Now, this should all sound eerily familiar to you guys because there's another team that is extremely favored in this year's NBA that is struggling with similar issues, but things on the surface seem to be going okay for them. So what's going on, guys? Your boy Mike here, and before we get to it, make sure you leave a like on the video and check out our latest episode of the Laced Up podcast featuring myself, Get Like Coop, and Mike Korzemba in the description down below. We're giving away a PlayStation 5 or an Xbox Series X to a subscriber that turns on our notifications for that channel. And now that we got all of that out of the way, cue the intro. At this point, you guys know Raycon is the official wireless earbud of the TheFlightMike, and they're disrupting the electronics industry by designing premium wireless audio for just half the price without a compromise in quality. They're doing things completely differently than the other brands out there that typically overcharge for their product, from the way they design their products to the way they finish them. Raycon prioritizes their customer experience from start to finish. They have a vast assortment of wireless earbuds in a range of fun different colors and patterns, with a variety of fit options, and the best part is there's no dangling wires and they'll consistently fit into your ear. And if you really want to see if Raycons are for you, they're so confident that you're going to like the product that they have a 45-day free return policy. They give you 6 hours of playtime, seamless Bluetooth pairing, more bass, and a way more compact design for a comfortable, noise-isolating fit. So click the link in the description down below or go to buyraycon.com/flightmike to get 15% off of your Raycon purchase. And thank you, Raycon, for sponsoring this video. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? Last night, Kevin Durant made his triumphant return to the Brooklyn Nets roster. However, James Harden was also sidelined for 10 games with a hamstring injury. Although it wasn't necessarily serious, it was more just a precautionary measure more than anything else. And to be honest, that didn't necessarily seem to matter when the Brooklyn Nets absolutely obliterated the New Orleans Pelicans and had Kevin Durant shooting a perfect 5 for 5 from the field for 17 points on the game and a career-high 118% true shooting percentage. Other players stepped up mightily in James Harden's absence. For example, the 35-year-old LaMarcus Aldridge had 22 points. And while everything seems to be looking good on the surface for the Brooklyn Nets in the regular season, there are some other issues that might affect them later on as they enter the playoffs. For example, during Kevin Durant's absence, the Brooklyn Nets were able to win 19 of their games and lose only 3 of their games. As a matter of fact, the triumvirate of James Harden, Kevin Durant, and Kyrie Irving is so remarkably good that since acquiring James Harden, the Brooklyn Nets have won 80% of their games when at least 2 of 3 of the members of their big 3 end up playing. They currently won 24 of their last 30. Now, here's where things get a little bit more scary, because the Brooklyn Nets, as remarkable as they are, and believe me, as I'm watching highlights and as I'm watching Blake Griffin magically be able to dunk again, as I'm watching LaMarcus Aldridge turn back the clock 3 or 4 years to when he first got to San Antonio, the one thing that's hitting my brain is, okay, things are looking good in the regular season. Bear in mind, last year's Los Angeles Clippers were undefeated when their entire team was fully healthy and all playing together. But check this out. So over the past 2 decades, there have been a multitude of big threes that were able to win a NBA championship built based around that big 3. Primarily the San Antonio Spurs dynasty that featured Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, and Manu Ginobili in the early 2000s, the Boston Celtics big 3 in the 2007 to 2008 NBA season, the Miami Heat big 3 in the early 2010s, and then, of course, the Golden State Warriors dynasty and the 1-year LeBron James was able to win a NBA championship with Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love. And out of all of those big 3s in the past 2 decades, there's only been 2 instances where a team has been able to win a NBA championship despite their big 3 only playing 55% of their games together or less. And that was in the 2015 to 2016 season with the Cleveland Cavaliers that featured LeBron James, Kyrie Irving, and Kevin Love, and the 2017 to 2018 NBA season that featured Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, and Klay Thompson. Do you know how many games the Brooklyn Nets Big 3 have played with one another so far? Well, they've only played 7 games together, and out of 52 games so far, that means they've played 14% of their games together. And if, hypothetically speaking, Harden is to come back and their Big 3 ends up playing the rest of their games together, that would mean that the Brooklyn Nets were able to play 45% of their games together when fully healthy. Bear in mind, the Brooklyn Nets have the 6th hardest schedule for the rest of the NBA season going into the NBA playoffs. So a good time for their Big 3 to work things out and get their chemistry right would be during this final stretch of games. Also, it's important to note that most of these other Big 3s didn't have 2 players that are literally just 2 years removed from being NBA All-Stars coming off of the bench. But nevertheless, this information is absolutely game-changing, and statistics and history typically don't lie to us whenever empirical data is presented so clearly. So let me know in the comment section down below. Are you reading into these statistics at all? Are you concerned about the Brooklyn Nets being able to carry on their dominance into the NBA playoffs? And do you think they'll still be able to win an NBA championship? Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.